And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program and for joining us every Sunday at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Mondays at 1 a.m., and Wednesdays for a special edition of Tell Me Your Story at 9 a.m., streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. We podcast at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, let's see, we've got SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, and then YouTube, where you can watch these interviews. I know I just duplicated myself, but that's all right. It's worth repeating because you folks have increased our listenership via the podcasts to 84,000 plus listens in a little over 4.5 years. Again, I say this every time with all humility. I have no clue as to what those numbers mean. I'm just glad they're going up, which means people are listening. And I have 74 subscribers, but I have a lot more people that are listening and not subscribing. And the only reason I would ask you to subscribe is so that you get notified when a new program, a new podcast or videocast is uploaded by yours truly. I'm not interested in increasing to 74,000 subscribers. That is not my goal. My goal is to get this information out. And that's why we have, as our very special guest here on the program, returning after, I can't even remember how long it's been since we've had Monique Guild on the program. Monique, thank you so much for joining us. And folks, this is our first in-studio interview. Yes, we have 2 cameras. Managed to make that happen. Thank you for being with us and coming up here to Santa Barbara.
Oh, thank you so much, Richard. I jumped at the opportunity. I was like, wait a minute. I'll come back to the studio. I'd love to and see you. And I love face-to-face, so there you have it.
It is so much better, I have to tell you. It's one of those things where the energy is so much different. It really is. So it's really nice to have you in studio. To talk about the work that you are doing, it was funny. I was looking through your website just the other day thinking, MGM. Well, it isn't quite MGM, but it's the Monique Guild's method. Mm-hmm. So I call it the MGM.
Yeah, that's
the
right.
Big roaring lion, that kind of thing.
That's right.
Let's kind of start there, and we'll get into some of your past. For those people who haven't heard our conversations of the past,
sure,
which goes back long before we were doing
You know
podcasts.
what? It was before Obama got elected.
Oh, wow.
I remember you asking me what did I think about the upcoming election, and it was going to be in November.
2007 maybe.
Yeah. So,
2008.
Wow, it's been a while.
Good grief. And we're about ready to celebrate coming this September. We'll call it the end of our 14th year of doing this program in particular. Tell us about the MGM, the Monique Guild's method.
So the Monique Guild method, okay, so first of all, I'm a futurist, intuitive business futurist, and I, over the years, have developed a method called the Monique Guild method, and where I am brought into any type of business situation or if a product or project or anyone's become stuck or blocked in business, whether it's a family partnership in El Salvador to a person who is figuring out what their next step is in their business and career lives. I have an inherited ability from my dad where I'm able to know exactly what's caused a business to get stuck on an atomic and molecular level just from hearing somebody's voice. Wow. Yeah, I don't know if you knew that part.
That's pretty deep.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It's pretty deep.
And my dad could have a patient walk in the door and tell you everything about that person before they open their mouth. He was a psychiatrist, and I inherited his ability. And my grandmother, she was definitely, they would never admit to any of this, but they absolutely they could do this. And she could see things, upcoming events that were going to happen and things like that. And so I'm able to go backwards and forwards in time with businesses and to know what's caused them to get stuck. But everybody starts with an initial consultation, and then we go on from there after I figure out exactly what's caused them to get stuck, and then we develop what's next. But there's a whole nother caveat that's developed over the last couple of years. I was really sick for 15 years, violently ill, yeah. And I was exposed to this toxic mold, and it was in my brain and my lungs. Even when I met you, I was still really ill. Mm-hmm. And so I had seen every top doctor in the world, Olympic ski team, neurologist, you name it. I've seen the best of the best. Nobody could help me. And I was going to jump off a cliff in Malibu in 2018, and instead I said a prayer because I couldn't live that way. I'd been in and out of the ER 1,000 times, and shooting pains in my brain and my lungs, and everything was squeezing. My brain was squeezed and all that kind of stuff, and nobody could help me. And within a couple of months of saying that prayer, I had some sort of, and it is what it is, I had some sort of divine intervention happen, and I was healed with healing hands, and I was left with a hand that heals. This is nothing I talk about. I'm talking about it probably for the first time on radio right here, on YouTube and everything else. And it's not something I put on my website, but now I deal with people who have health cases because I have a right hand that has healed animals and people and you name it. All over all kinds of situations. When doctors can't figure out what's going on health-wise, I'm able to figure that out too. You know, back in 92, I think 91, 92, I was touted as the bubbly Sherlock Holmes in the LA Times.
Yeah, I saw that.
And little did I know that it would end up being true in both business and health now. Wow. I'm able to detect what's going on, and my hand has been of help. I call it my hovering hand. I don't think of myself as a healer, but I'm not, but my hand, absolutely. So I just said all this. It's been word of mouth for a really long time, the last 3 years.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I feel like we have a scoop.
Yeah, you got the inside scoop now. So that's part of the Monique Guild method too. And I actually feel really blessed. I feel like the creator of the universe and the galaxy is working through me and doing all kind of stuff. So
you think this is something that, as you said, you inherited this intuitive aspect from your father? You think it was in the chromosomes, the DNA kind of thing, or is it just something that sort of spiritually is sort of, passed on? I mean, I've heard stories of where, it's next to impossible to really know where that information is contained. It says, okay, we want to pass this on to each generation. We don't want it to skip. Whereas, like in my family, with the congenital eye issues, it skipped my two eldest sisters, but my brother, and my two younger sisters got it. However, my eldest sister's daughter didn't, and her children, as far as I know, do not have it.
Interesting.
Which is it's very interesting.
That is
how all of this.
Yeah.
So when it comes to these kind of spiritual manifestations in our lives,
right?
And it's something I also want to talk about a little bit further in a different direction.
Sure.
But what are your thoughts in that regard, in terms of how other individuals? My grandmother did this, and my grandfather did that, and my great-grandmother was this, and that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've got that too.
Right. So I'll start off saying that, I inherited ability from my dad, and my mom gave me a life where that ability got seriously exercised. I mean, I had to know the difference between the FBI and the CIA at a really early age. I was put on the street, locked and kicked out of the house when I was 10 years old, and I had to figure out, what was I going to do? My mom wouldn't let me back in the house. And so I went to the bar and across the street and stood on a chair and made a collect call to my dad, and he sent a cab. But from there on in, my mom married somebody where it became one of the top 4 federal cases in Louisiana, and it's been written up in a book, and it was in the media for a year and a half, and I literally had to know the good guys from the bad guys. There would be being people seriously hurt, and to become one of the top 4 federal cases in Louisiana, there's some stuff going down because it's so corrupt there. So I had this lifestyle, this background where I did not know I had an inherited ability, but I had to be able to read people and know things ahead of time to stay safe, and I did stay safe. And that ability, I didn't realize I had it. I always knew when people would talk about business stuff, it's like I'd get this film that runs in my mind, and I would follow the pictures. And I just instinctually knew things. So I believe that we all have intuitive abilities. We all have abilities, and as a result of our background, they get exercised in one form or another. Like for me, it was being able to read situations, read people, know things ahead of time. And somebody else might have a different situation that they come from, and they have a different type of ability. Like some people get it in dreams, or some people get it in just different forms and fashions. But mine comes in, it's directly related to businesses. It's absolutely related. And I get films and blocks of information. So to answer your question about how it skipped a generation with you, I think it would have to do with chromosomes and, who someone
because
got.
it's more biological,
It's
physiological.
biological, yeah.
Right.
Whereas this is more, I mean, there's a part, people say it is part of the brain where I accessed more of my brain. But there's also the unknown factor, that we're connected to something way greater than ourselves, whatever you want to call it. And I think if we're able to download from that situation, let's get quiet enough to hear how we're being guided.
Well, that's something I want to talk about as we continue. We're talking with Monique Guild, and we're talking about the work that she does with the Monique Guild method, among other things, as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you all for joining us here on the program. You talk about something that we talk about every single program. We bring this up in the sort of the announcements portion, and I usually put it off till later because I want to jump right in to the conversation. We talk about wanting people to participate in what we call the Decade of Perfect Vision. It started out in September of 2019 as the Year of Perfect Vision. When the year of 2020 was over, we moved it to the decade, adding another 10 years, or 9 years, if you will. What that means is we are asking people to spend time going within into that quiet, still, peaceful, calm place,
Right.
and listen to the still, small voice inside that will give you encouragement, it will give you inspiration, it will give you insight, it will give you perfect vision, if you will.
Yes.
Because there is no filter. Whereas when we are sharing, even in this conversation,
Yes.
everything we say is being filtered through something, and you can't escape that. That's just the nature of the human being. But with the still small voice, there is no filter.
Right.
It's direct, and so that's something we encourage people to do is to spend that time. I'm curious as to when you, even though as you've already stated that you, as you put it, inherited this from your father. Did you tap into it right away as a young child?
Oh, I had to. Like, people were really being hurt, like seriously hurt. I didn't realize I was, not at the time, but now as an adult, as I've grown as an adult, it's interesting. There were enormous distractions as a child, enormous distractions. I mean, it's literally my stepfather's case it was a huge case, and it involved world-renowned people and stuff like that. And but all that meant is it got more media attention. And so, and people knew our business. But now as an adult, so I had to tap in if I wanted to be safe. I mean, I had to. I didn't have a choice. I really didn't. But now as an adult, making sure that I take that time to meditate, making that time to journal every day, taking that time so that I can hear my guidance. Because as an adult, living in Los Angeles, I mean, there's so many distractions going on,
good
to
grief,
hear how we're being guided and what our next step is.
Yeah.
And there's also the internal distractions that go on. And so really learning how to quiet those, so quiet the insides and the outsides, so I can really hear that intuitive voice and follow that guidance is crucial. Oh my gosh. When I feel like I can't hear that voice or that guidance, it scares me.
Yeah.
It's really an important thing for me.
Now, here is something, a little twist on it that was given to me as I shared this whole concept with one of my other guests. And it had to do with the question that they asked is that, well, how can you be sure, Richard, that voice that you're listening to, that you're allowing to guide you, isn't one of those voices that's telling you to go out and kill 16 people or cause this mayhem and that and do and that? How can you be sure it's of God? And I said, well, I don't really have an answer for that at that time. That's where I was. I'm curious as to what your answer to that question would be. How do we make sure that the voice we're listening to is genuine. It's our higher self, the divine, whatever other names people might have for it.
So, I mean, in my opinion, I don't think that the universe, God, the creator, the all-knowing, the whatever you want to call the outside forces, whatever they are to whoever, I don't think they're intentionally wanting us to hurt anyone. I mean, that is like...
Or self.
Or self, hurt ourselves or anyone else. You know, I really don't. It's, I feel that, you know, in the name of anything that's man-made, like in the name of religion, name of this, in the name of I'm going to go kill so-and-so in the name of religion, that's a man-made deal. You know, the creator creates.
Correct. Yeah.
Period. The creator creates. Creator's not into destruction. You know, if you follow, I don't know the Bible well, but just, you know, verses here and there. And I do believe that in some respects it's a good instruction because it talks about Jesus, what Jesus was able to do. And we are able to do this and more, you know. And Jesus is an example of a man who became, I'm paraphrase all this, but who became a god as well, and this we will do this and more, and this is how Jesus did certain things, but I don't believe that we are meant to hurt other people. What gives us the right to hurt another human being?
And there's a big difference between destruction and what Jesus went through, and that was transformation.
Right.
They tried to destroy him.
Right.
That's, you know, as the story goes, they tried to destroy him, but he was not destroyed. However, he did, I don't say he was, he did transform.
Yes.
To, I will say maybe a higher level of being.
Transform and transcended.
And transcended, yeah.
For sure. And I think that, you know, whatever environments we're in, whether it's our family environments, our communities, our society, it is about transformation. I think we're either in creation or really destruction somehow. You know, we're either expanding beyond where we've been before or we're going to implode somehow. And I think it's, even if we're just expanding in smaller ways, but anything that has to do with destroying another being is not of... no one has the right to take the life of another being, even as far as animals go too, you know, sentient beings. So,
you know, it is interesting the arguments you hear sometimes to justify that, whether it be war, whether it be through our penal system, our judicial system, you know, and so forth. And I am still flabbergasted that somehow the logic has been lost along the way. Just simple logic. Yeah. And then the other aspect of it, too, is I keep hearing about how when two people create and this is a phrase a new life. It's not new. You're not creating something out of a vacuum. You have to have the right two cells, okay, the egg and the sperm, and to me, this is just my observation, it's a continuation of life, not new.
Right.
It may be a different manifestation, but again, that goes back to what we just talked about, a transformational, transcendent expression that continues the species, if you will, right?
Right. You know, that's an interesting topic because, you know, the whole thing of a woman is raped and all that sort of thing. I think a woman does have the right to choose. I don't think, I think when somebody's violated her body, somebody's done something against her who's destructive, why would she have to take in that energy? You know, I don't think that, you know, that's a whole different ballgame, but... It really is.
We won't get into that. But what I find so fascinating is 99% of the time, those arguments are made by men. Men are making those arguments, not women. You don't hear, and I think more and more women are starting to speak out. Not the ones who've been abused or raped or have you, but the female side of the species is starting to say, hey, stop. Stop.
You
know. We're talking
For
with
sure.
Monique Guild, and we're talking about, well, obviously a lot of different things. She has a website, moniqueguild.com, and we hope that you will go there. We will be linked to your website, as we do with all of our guests, here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it's really nice to have Monique Guild in studio with us after, well, if I try to do the math, we're looking at least 13, 14, maybe 15 years.
I think so. Can you
Holy
imagine?
mackerel.
I know.
And I think the last time we did the interview was on the phone. We weren't using...
I was in studio.
Oh, you were in
That's
studio.
how I knew to come in studio this time. And
See,
we
my
talked.
memory.
Yeah, we talked about Obama was not in office yet, and the elections were coming up, and how did I see them coming out, turning out, and all that sort of stuff. I went back and read our notes from a lot months ago before we even connected this time.
Oh, wow.
So it was kind of cool to see, like what did I say at that time?
And very rarely do we deal with current events because, from my perspective, they're irrelevant. Everything is temporal.
Right.
Everything is temporary, except energy.
Yeah.
Okay, it's permanent. It is just transformed.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And to that end, our spiritual life, our inner life, that higher life, that is permanent and immortal.
Yes.
The physical world is temporary. It's not immortal. And I find it so perplexing. I'd love for you to talk about this. The struggle that humanity has over this aspect of change. That it's as if, and again, I don't want to get into, by any means, into politics, but you and I both know that there's one side of the aisle in this country that would love to go back to the way things were in the 1950s. Because we had morals and we had values and a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage and the woman was at home barefoot and pregnant. And I'm sitting here going, yeah, but there was a segment of our population it was not fun for at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back to the 50s,
Right.
first of all, because I wasn't born until 1960.
Right.
And second of all, we got to move forward.
Yeah.
And I love there's that beautiful song by REM.
Which one?
The one that says,
love REM.
It's the end of the world as we
know
know it. And every minute of every day, of every year, of every decade, etc., is just that.
Yeah.
The minute that we just went through, gone.
It's gone.
It's the end of the world for that minute.
As we know it.
And everything that was before it, it's gone.
Yep.
We can't
It's
go
so
back.
true. Right. I know.
And yet people want to go back. And they claim that, it's like, I use the word evolution when it comes to education. Why do you send your kids to school? Why? For 12 years you send them to school, force them to participate in an educational system that you even say is horrible. That's why I had to laugh when I heard about the parents who wanted their kids to go back to school as soon as possible with COVID and everything. And I'm going, you probably are the same people who think that the system is horrible. It's not teaching our kids. Then why would you want to send them there?
Well, let me address the first issue you brought up,
go ahead.
which is the people wanting to go back. I think that people want to go backwards because they haven't created a future reality that they're more excited about.
Good point.
Whereas when it's like when you get your first bicycle or your first girlfriend or your first boyfriend, and it's all you can think about until you ride your bike or you drive your first car. You get your first car and you drive by your friends. You're like, I'm driving, and you can't think about anything until you're driving, and then that day when you can go pick up a friend in the car, and it's all you can think about. You're all consumed, or your first boyfriend, it's all you think about until you see your first boyfriend, or oh my God, you're just obsessed, right? And we have lost that as adults. We really have. I think most of the population has lost that childlike quality of newness and stepping into an unknown and being so excited about the unknown. They've, as adults, we've had a few knocks and we've had a few things, whether it's illness or death or loss or just so much of what life happens, and that dream and that I read recently, when was the last time you did something for the first time?
Oh, wow. Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
we really need to get to that.
I'm thinking right now.
Right, exactly. When was the last time you did something for the first time? And as kids, we had so many first all the time.
Yeah.
When's the last time you did something, you know, for
Yeah.
the first time? So, we as adults, we've got to explore that again. We've got to get that. That is the only reason why anybody would want to go backwards, is because it's a safety, it's a known. Whereas the territory that the world is stepping into now on so many levels
Oh, yeah.
is mind blowing. And somehow it's mind blowing in a great way. I just got off the phone with a company person, as a company, virtual VR, AR, AI, all these things, and it's like, oh my God, and they talked about. I was reading an article yesterday, a day ago, that somebody at Google quit Google because the AI robot it's too sentient, it's too human, and it's scary, and it scared them, and they quit Google. They're like, whoa, what we're doing is not right. I mean, like, even the way, and I was reading, they gave a log of how the back and forth of the conversation between this person and the AI, the robot, and it's like, oh my God, this is kind of wild.
And here's an interesting kicker, a twist to it. Some will say, oh my God, we shouldn't be going down this road. And of course, I always ask this question of things like this, whether it's in science or medicine or education or religion, not spirituality, but religion. Just because we can, does that mean we should?
I know.
But here's the twist.
Uh-huh.
How do we know that the universe, the higher power, God, didn't design it to go in this direction?
Right.
How do we know?
Well, we know because it's happening. You know what I mean?
There's that
it's
too.
happening, and there is good to it. There is some good. There
Some
is
pluses,
good.
yeah.
Everything has its pluses and minuses, though, and it's how it's used,
True.
how human beings use it.
Yeah.
Do you know? And that's the whole key, is that the humans, goes back to what you originally talked about, is how do we know with creation or are we in creation or destruction? And the bottom line is, I think taking somebody else's life is not a creative thing. We're not, so it's not up to us. But AI, it's a very it's an interesting topic. But I think that as adults, we've got to at least explore, because that's why so many people want to run back to their future, their past, because it's a known factor and it's safe.
Yeah,
that was
you go.
safe.
Yeah.
Whereas right now, it's pretty scary. You got guns going off, people shooting everybody. I mean, it seems like the wild, wild west in a different way.
Yeah.
In a way different way.
And I will tell you that I would rather go into the void.
Right.
I would rather go into the future void.
Yes,
than go to the past.
Right.
Because going to the past basically means that you will relive all of this stuff that we're going through now. Okay?
Right.
As you've kind of put it, the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
Because you can't change the past. I love these programs that like to tell us that we can go into the past and make changes that will alter the future, our present.
Right.
And I'm thinking, what's the point? Because again, what you're wanting to alter is the material world.
Right.
And it's temporary anyway.
Right.
I mean, granted, the sun isn't going to explode for another several billion years, but one day it will.
Right.
Now, whether human beings are still alive and exist here or on this planet, who knows?
Right. Right.
But one of the things I find so fascinating is the conversation about the one mind. I think wasn't it Carl Jung who talked about that in his philosophy of psychology?
I think you're right, yes.
That there's only one mind and that we're all part of that one mind. It's like we're all smaller holographic images of the whole mind.
Right.
And I also read something the other day about addiction, and I realize this doesn't sound like it's part of this, but
it is.
I think it is.
Yeah.
The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It is not sobriety, this article said.
Interesting.
The opposite of addiction is connection.
Oh.
And I thought,
Interesting.
Wow.
That's something to
That
contemplate.
makes a big difference in what you do if you really want to live a fulfilling life.
Yeah.
You really want to live your life's purpose, find your life's purpose and then live it. Then you want to get reconnected. One time we all were. But you want to get reconnected because the basic addiction, basically what it's doing is it's cutting off that connection for that addiction. It doesn't matter what it is.
They say from the sunlight of the spirit.
Exactly, exactly, yeah. We're going to talk more about that with Monique Guild here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we're talking right now about this aspect of being connected to the all, if you will. Being connected, as was mentioned earlier, to the one mind, as Carl Jung talks about. And I wish that I had studied more of Carl Jung. I did take psychology.
You can.
I know I can.
When's the last time you studied?
Exactly.
For the first time.
The last time I studied psychology was in junior college back in the early 80s. And I have to tell this story regardless. My best friend and I, who I have known for 50 years, I don't know why I love saying that, but 50 years. And we're still connected. We still touch base. The one fun thing about him, he and I, was that we went through grade school, high school, and college together.
Wow.
And the last semester that I was in school, he and I were in college together at junior college in Phoenix. Each semester that we were there, and I think we were there 3 semesters. So the first 2 semesters, he might drop 1 class. But the 3rd semester, he dropped the 1st class. And we would chat a little bit about it and go on to the next class. The next day, he dropped another class. And before the week was out, he had dropped all the classes. And I said, well, why did you do that? He says, well, it was just so much fun. I just couldn't stop. And it was just hilarious.
Oh, my God.
But I didn't do so well in the class psychology, but I was fascinated by it. Fascinated by the concepts and the different philosophies, whether it was Freud or Carl Jung, or even those that I was introduced to about 15 years later. Teilhard de Chardin, is that right? And
De Chardin.
Pierre Teilhard. I think it was Chardin and Teilhard. Those are 2 different individuals. I'm trying to remember their... Anyway, the 0 point.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard of that.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I went through these personal growth programs in the 90s where the facilitator, who has since passed on, his name was George Adair, not the famous philosopher. He was actually a printer. He had a company called Papago Printing in Phoenix. And he would talk about this stuff all the time. I remember him talking about how nothing that exists today in the physical, nothing that exists today was not created with, in other words, everything that has been created was created with, and this is a very generic term here, very higher and spiritual term, was created with sexual energy. That energy that is within us. That's how everything's created.
Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
That's what he talks about. And I think chapter 7 or something. He talks about that and the energy and the power behind that sexual energy. But what I think is interesting is you're bringing up this point 0.
Yes,
that you said
0
that this
point, yeah.
0 point, that this teacher of yours used to speak about this. And, everything comes from that point 0.
Yeah.
And in our contemplations, backed by power, especially like a sexual energy, that contemplation with that type of energy coming into it is very, very powerful. And the reason, in Think and Grow Rich, they say that the reason why so many of the men that were so successful in that book was because it was all sexual driven to meet that woman, to meet their wife, to meet, that sort of thing. And so it caused them to think, even grow neurologically grow in ways that they may have never thought before. It was such a massive drive.
Yeah, and he even actually, I still have the reel-to-reel that we recorded this on. And now I'm trying to remember. It was along the lines of the spiritual aspects of sex, and it was fascinating. The presentation he made that I recorded for him, that he made available, and and this has absolutely nothing to do with anything of the physical nature of the sexual relationship between men and women, or whatever the case may be. And so it seems like we're missing so much because we place these
Well, you said it
gauges.
earlier. Connection.
Yeah.
It's all about that connection, you know. And I think of these kids that are in these schools that are isolated, alone, and so many of the shooters are the kids that are isolated and alone and feel different and feel like outcast. You know?
That's the other thing too that I find fascinating about the adults today in this country specifically, who they want to preserve whatever rights it is they think they want to preserve. And I'm sitting here going, wait a minute, you're telling me that your rights are more important than our children, who you say are our future, are more important than them feeling safe.
Right.
Seriously.
Right.
Seriously.
Right. It's unbelievable.
And the Second Amendment, not to get into that conversation, it doesn't put a limitation on how many, but I ask the question, how many do you need?
Right, I know.
You know, but
it's
anyway, that's another
horrible.
subject. That's another subject for the show.
It's so tied into so many different, you know, monetary.
It seems like we're so disconnected, not only from the higher power, but from each other. Not and quite honestly, the virus and the lockdown over the last 2 years, or I'm guessing that most of the country is now unlocked. But for those, let's just say 2 years.
Yes.
The disconnect has been there long before that.
Right. It really brought up what has, you know, brought up things to the surface that need to be healed within the nation, within the globe, everywhere.
Everywhere.
I don't want to blame it on technology, but technology has social media. Social media has disconnected
has been growing for
us.
decades.
Yeah. Where would you think it would have started before social media?
Long before social media, it started, I think, in the late 70s, maybe early 80s, when what I call the fairness doctrine that the FCC had in place up until then, which basically said that when you do a radio or television program, a broadcast, you're going to talk about a particular subject. You talk about it from at least two or more sides. Okay? In other words, you have a conversation similar to what we're doing. In other words, you could be disagreeing with me 100% right now.
Right.
And that would be just fine.
Right.
Because I'm here to learn too.
Right. Me too. Right.
But the point is not for you and I to agree. It's for you and I to have a conversation that brings up conversational points for those people who are listening.
Right.
And if you have information that you have researched and brought forth that has helped you to help others,
right,
and you share that with the audience, whoever they may be, and let them make up their own mind.
Exactly.
Like
it's agreeing to disagree. Do you know, like, I may not agree with the philosophies that you have or things, but I can listen to your opinion, your sides, your whatever, and we can hear each other. You know, they in the 12-step programs, they always say keep press, radio, and films, also politics and religion out of it. Otherwise, you just have a bunch of people fighting all the time, and they wouldn't be addressing the real issue. Right, which is the separation. Like we talked about addiction being a separation, no connection. And so the moment, you know, politics and all these things get into the mix, it's just a big distraction. It's a huge distraction from our humanity and what's going on. I mean, really, everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants family, community, to be heard, to be accepted, you know, and that's, you know, just human common decency, that sort of thing. And I think that if we could just hear each other more, you know, and just listen and not have to agree, disagree, just go, okay, all right, I may not agree with what you just said, but that's, you know, whatever.
And it's like that's your opinion, and my saying that doesn't make you wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying that's your opinion.
Right.
I have a different one. Doesn't make me right.
And we grew up in different backgrounds. We grew up in different everything, and so of course we're going to have differences. And so I think that's one of humanity's biggest opportunities for growth is to learn to accept each other's differences and to move forward into the unknown as opposed to going backwards to safety, which is total destruction. You know, I mean, we've been destroying ourselves forever, you know.
As long as we've been here. I've even asked the question, on some programs. I'm a very optimistic person. I do believe that we can turn things around.
Yep.
However, I have asked this question of some of my guests. I'll put this to you. And I probably already know what your answer is, because you're also a very positive and optimistic person. But I look at our history as a species. I mean, in our total history, okay, from the beginning.
Right.
And I say, okay, based upon man's inhumanity to man throughout her history, you really think we deserve to continue as a species? I mean, come on, we haven't gotten it. So maybe we should just stop.
But who's to make that decision?
Well, but it's more, the question is, do you really think we should continue as a species?
Right.
If we can't get along with one another on some of the simplest things, we're never going to progress. And quite honestly, our government in this country, but I know this is this way in others, there hasn't. Yes, we've moved forward technologically.
Yeah.
We have not moved forward
Humanitarially.
civilly. We haven't moved forward governmentally, politically, religiously, and quite honestly, the process that we need to really embrace. Again, I say it's my opinion. I take it. It's on me. If you want to take it, fine. I'm not putting this on anybody else. It's evolution.
Right.
Evolution in every area of one's life. Again, why do you send your kids to school? That is an evolutionary process. Education is just that, because we're supposed to move forward, learn things, be able to process information and so forth.
What do you think about Elon's philosophy on education, though? You know, he's created his own school for his kids. You know, and what he does is he's really. I'm a big Elon fan. I've really studied him, and I like his philosophies in different areas, and with each individual, he has, I think, 7 kids now, and he looks to see their own talents, their own what are they bringing to the world, and he has created a school for his kids that other children can join now too. I think like 40 children a year or something, but they really assess what is that child here, what is their talent, what is their ability, what is coming out of them that we need to pay attention to, and not make them all conform to a cookie cutter educational system.
Yeah. Well, here's a kicker that I found after I got out of high school. And I remember being taught in biology in high school that boys and girls learn differently, because girls' brains supposedly, from a biological standpoint, develop a little faster than the male brain. Okay? That's just the way it is. There's nothing right or wrong. It is the way that it is. And that boys have a lot more energy and have trouble sitting still in school, you know, especially in the early grades and so forth. And I thought, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I understand that, because if I had gone to school in the 80s, I'd probably have been put on some form of Ritalin or something. But I was just a very active kid.
Right.
I was a kid.
Right.
Okay, with lots of energy.
Right.
So I get into the 80s, and I'm hearing of all of these kids being put on Ritalin and this and that,
ADHD
and the other,
and all these.
Wait a minute! You told me in biology in the 70s that boys and girls were different.
Well, the two hemispheres, the connective tissues between the two hemispheres. The female is more connect faster than the male.
But the point I was getting to was. How can you be drugging these children when you just told me that boys and girls are different, and that every individual boy is different from every other individual boy? And so
that's where the monetary system sets in with the pharmaceutical companies, and where they're making a lot of money, and we could get into that whole thing, and that's what's going on.
But I applaud, if that is indeed what Elon is doing for his kids and now others, I applaud him for looking at each individual as such.
Yes.
I remember going to my doctor when I was diagnosed, number one, with high blood pressure several years ago. And I said, well, okay, I'll go ahead and take the medication to keep the blood pressure down, but how do you know that my blood pressure doesn't run in the high normal area?
Right.
How do you know that mine isn't supposed to run there?
Right.
And then when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 2 years ago, I certainly didn't say that because the numbers were extremely high. A1C is supposed to be around 5.7. I was 11.2. My average was 275, supposed to be around 120. And he even said, probably even 300 when they checked it 2 years ago. And he says, it's a long road, Richard. I says, no, it's not. I know how I got here. I said it was the pandemic. Because what did we all go to when we were first locked down? We went to comfort foods. What do comfort foods have? Carbs and sugars. And carbs turn to sugars. So I got off the sodas. I haven't had a soda in almost 2 years. Okay.
Good for you.
I switched to those flavored sparkling drinks. Now I love, that's funny, somebody said to me, they applauded me for getting off the sodas and then said, yeah, but Richard, do you know that the nitrogen in those bubbly drinks with the, sugar, no sugar and no carbs, you know that's, I said, excuse me, one step at a time. Okay. Well, I'm not drinking all of that sugar and all of that stuff. So give me a little credit here.
Right.
I'll work on the whole nitrogen thing a little further down the road. Anyway, but I go back to the fact of what you have just said about, again, the Elon Musk school and the way they evaluate kids. We are all individuals. We are all different. And the one thing that really makes us similar, aside from the fact that we all, if you cut us, we all bleed red blood. Okay, I always thought when I was a kid,
we all do.
I heard about all the fighting and everything else, what's the matter with you people? We all have the same blood. Why is that a problem here? And I know it was other things. But the one thing that makes us all the same and or connected is that we all experience the same emotions. Different intensities, granted, but all the same emotions. What makes us, and I say this way, unique, not different, but unique, is the stories behind those emotions, whether it be joy or fear.
That's right. Our stories are so important. They are. They're in so many individual amazing, everybody has their story. Of how they got to where they got to and what happened and what their journeys have been. And they're so important and they need to be heard. And that's why I love the title of your show. It's just so important because we all individually have our stories. And if we could just understand that we all have our stories and the reason why we are the way we are, and just we're all different in that way.
Monique Guild's my guest, and we're here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I want to ask you, Monique Guild, who is with us, moniqueguild.com, the website we will be connected to as well. Am I correct that you do have a book that's out?
The book has been a book that is done.
It
is done. And we are just, there's a little tweaking with, some of the, a couple of things. And, but that book needs to be done. But then there's yes. So the answer is yes, but it's not published just yet.
Mine is in the same stage of it's done, but not done. I'm still finishing it, and it's been 21 years.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
I was working on it when I talked to you, 13, 14 years ago.
Yes.
But that's okay, because I believe in divine right timing, and that I am finally sitting down and going through it line by line to see, okay, does this fit here and there and there and so forth. Good. And then I'll get a proofreader, and then I'll get an editor to look at it, and the whole process.
Yes, excellent.
But it's really very interesting, I'm sure, for you to create this. Now, this particular work that you're going to be coming out with, hopefully, maybe by the end of this year. What in general, what are we looking at? What are we going to be able to read from
So
this?
It's based on a workshop I've taught for 20 years called the Intuitive Goal Workshop, and it's all about our soul's purpose goals. It's based on a workshop I've taught for 20 years through corporations and privately, and I've taught it every which way you can imagine. I put it into book form. And so what is it, how are we being guided? How does our intuition speak to us? What are the blocks that prevent us from hearing how we're guided? And learning to identify and trust our own intuition, and it has all kinds of stuff in it. But the workshop was very successful for a long time, and so That is what that book is based on. But there's a couple of other things that are in the works as well, too. So,
what would you say, from your perspective, is the greatest thing that you learned from the past 2 years specifically? What did the past 2 years tell you or teach you? What insights, what intuitive messages did you receive about the last 2 years that may very well prepare all of us for the coming days, weeks, months, and years as we, I won't say it, as we transform or evolve into that higher being that we all internally really do desire to be?
So collectively, there's the collective and then there's the individual. So collectively, to prepare all of us for what is to, well, how do I answer that? It's a very good question. Things can change on a dime. Know that. Be prepared. The government is not coming to save anybody. We've known that for a long time, being from New Orleans during Katrina.
Yeah.
There was nobody there. And we really need to be self-sustaining, self-supporting, growing our own foods if possible, even if it's on your apartment balcony, you know, just something where you're growing some tomatoes or some sort of something, because one day you may need to barter with your neighbor who has grown oranges or lettuce or whatever, or dill, or collectively, everything is not as it appears to be. And God, there's so much. I mean, how in the world do I answer that? There's so much in so many different areas, you know, individually, collectively. I mean, individually, you really learn who you're connected to and who you're not connected to and who you want to be connected to and who you don't want to be connected to. And to not live in fear. I drove across country from LA to New Orleans. My dad was dying, and I drove to New Orleans and back to LA, 27-hour drive there, 27-hour drive back, did it several times. And to not live in fear, but take care of myself and do what I needed to do to be healthy and safe and to follow the protocol, you know, to take care of myself. We have to be able to take care of ourselves. Yeah. And, what's to come of the future of the United States, the globe, the world? I think we're going to have a pandemic in just a different way. I think we're going to have a financial pandemic. We're in the middle of it beginning now, you know, with the markets and everything that's happening. And I feel that we need to be aware of that and get to know your neighbors. This is where we can start the connection again, because you're going to need that neighbor. That neighbor is going to have your community. They're going to have a hammer and you're not, and you're going to need to nail up something to keep the draft from coming in because it's so cold outside, and to keep your electric bills down. You know, there could be a lot of good of getting ready to come here out of knowing your neighbors. How can you come together and come? That's where I think the unity and community and all that can repair itself. But the financial stuff is going to hit.
From a spiritual level, do you think that, again, from a spiritual level, that the construct that was created, what was it, 20 some odd years ago, where they talk about life, liberty, property, those kinds of things.
Pursuit of happiness.
And pursuit of happiness. Again, I'm going to say it for a third time. From a spiritual level, do you think or intuit that those concepts are irrelevant, not unimportant, but irrelevant to what we need to do from the inside and on the inside?
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So life, that's an inside job. We've got to be, you know, living from inside out, not outside in. Where are we getting life from? Are we getting life from our community? Are we getting it from our foods? Are we getting it from what we read, what we digest, what we watch in the media? liberty is freedom. How are we free? How are we spiritually free? How are we spiritually connecting initially with ourselves? How are we spiritually connecting, meditating, journaling, hearing our inside guidance? How are we following that intuitive voice? And then how are we the freedom with the connection with the globe, the rest of the world?
Yeah.
And I think that the more that we find that freedom within individually in our own ways, and we're able to somehow collectively come together unitarily, I think it's so important to find that freedom within, even though you may be confined inside your own home. Right? And then the pursuit of happiness, how will you spiritually find that pursuit of happiness if you're in lockdown or you can't do certain things? How are you still able to satiate and feeling that freedom, that happiness? So it's really an inside job.
Yeah.
It is. It's such an on all levels, because we think that the outside world's going to fix us, bigger, better, greater car, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, this, that, whatever. Nature is key in all of it.
I don't know about you in your drive up here, but I was walking outside yesterday, as warm as it was, and I was just looking around and looking up at the trees and just trying to listen as much as I could to the sounds, not so much of the traffic that I could hear, and just doing my utmost to take in as much as I could.
Yes, nature is our greatest. Our bodies and nature are our greatest teacher.
You have quoted me.
Oh, really?
Because I say that all the time, that nature is our greatest teacher.
It so is. It is.
But we're not attending class.
Well, some are and some aren't.
In a lot of ways.
But some will have to.
Yes.
You'll have to. You either will or you won't, and you'll do it maybe in the next lifetime.
Yeah.
The energy evolves. We come back again and get to do it all over again. So.
Do you feel that reincarnation is not real or legitimate, but is a, how do I want to put this? I know that one of the reasons why the church eliminated it from its doctrine several centuries ago, was because they thought it gave people this false sense of, I don't have to do anything right this lifetime because I'll come back and I'll do it right the next time. I don't think that people actually thought that. If there were those who actually did believe that, we come back again and again and again to learn lessons and so forth. Do you think that there are those today who believe in reincarnation to the extent?
There's a whole thing of people believe
that.
But
But for what reason do you think they believe that? Or maybe better yet, because you can speak to this, what reason do you believe that reincarnation is real?
I look at things in a more scientific way.
Okay.
And so I think it takes like a trillion to be born again into this life. It takes like a trillion, I think it's eggs and sperms or something, to actually get another body or something like that. Like it takes forever. You don't just like snap, come back, or
Right.
Scientifically, it's just not, I don't think it goes that way.
Right.
And reincarnation is not something for me, I don't think about past lives or reincarnation, because I'm dealing with this life right here, right now.
Yes.
I've got plenty on my hands right now.
I was gonna say,
I don't need to be getting into the other stuff. I mean, for God's sake, talk about go to the past, and be distracted.
Yeah.
I'm just dealing with where I am right here, sitting here, and then I've got to drive back, home through and move forward and stay connected to, creating future things,
Right,
and
right.
and go back into frickin' past lives. That's not going to be me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wouldn't be the person to talk about that. I don't have time for all that. I don't.
I want to throw out one more before we wrap things up here.
Sure.
A wonderful analysis of the human existence was shared with me not long ago, where their perception, and I thought this was a very valid, reasonable, and logically well thought out explanation as to why we are not indigenous to this planet. That if you take a look at every other species other than man, they are well adapted to their environments. Do you see polar bears at the equator? Do you see iguanas at the poles? Of course not. And yet man seems to have to kill other animals to create the clothing and or the things to keep them warm if they're too far above the equator, or shed pretty much everything in order to survive in the warmer climates.
So are you asking me if there are aliens? Or we?
Do you think that we're indigenous to this planet?
That's a really good question.
I know
I've
it's a
never been asked
strange
that.
question,
Yeah, I've
but-
never ever been asked that. I was thinking about Native Americans and how. Don't even get me started. I mean, talk about illegal aliens. We are all illegal except the Native Americans. So I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, okay.
Period.
Sure.
That's different than what you just asked.
I know.
So we are all illegal aliens. But getting back to is man indigenous to, have you ever watched the show Ancient Aliens?
Yes. Oh, many times.
Love it.
Many times.
So I'm just going to leave it with that.
Okay.
I'm a huge subscriber to all what that whole show's about.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
So that's my answer.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
We are talking with Monique Guild, and we are talking about the work that she does, and her website is moniqueguild.com. We hope that you will go there. We will be linked to her website as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. And Monique, I want to thank you so much for, number one, being on the program. Number two, for taking the drive from Los Angeles all the way up here to be with us here on Tell Me Your Story.
I had to do that.
And
Yeah.
three, for sharing what you have with us here on the program. It's been fascinating.
Thank you. It's been so refreshing to have an open discussion on so many different topics.
Yeah, well.
And to have a conversation, and to explore. And so I thank you for that. I think what you're doing is amazing, and you're doing such a great job.
Well,
and
thank you.
It's so good to see you, and it was worth every second of the drive here and back.
Well,
so
I'm hoping that the drive back, especially between here and, let's say, Ventura or Oxnard, is pleasant, because you'll have a nice
It'll be
ocean
beautiful.
view
Yeah.
going down that way. I don't know if you go back to PCH or not, but you still have an ocean view there if you go that way.
Right.
Although, unfortunately, they've got so many buildings now up on the beach side. I don't know how much you can see. But, it's the
all
ocean
good.
is still there.
Yeah.
It's still there.
It's all good. Thank you, Richard, so much.
You are very
You're
welcome.
amazing.
Before I let you go, I do have three final questions that I
Sure.
ask all of my guests.
Sure.
All right. And I'm going to jump into those. I'm not going to mention all of the other stuff that we talk about as we wrap things up about the podcast, the video casts, and all that other stuff. I'm just going to jump right into this. First of those three questions is, who is Monique Guild?
Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? On which level? There are several.
You pick.
Yeah.
It's an open question.
I am a child of God. That's who I am. I'm a child of the Creator, and I am here to allow God to work through me and do its work. And I'm here to be an open vessel and clear away my muck, whatever those distractions are, so I can be the best channel I can possibly be to help other people and to evolve humanity somehow.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
What do I want to hope to? Children. I want to help kids hear their intuitive voices, and no matter what is going on in their external worlds, that they will know that they can hear their inside self and get the guidance they need, even though there might be just absolute hell going on in front of them. I really want to help kids.
And finally, what is your life's purpose?
My life's purpose is to live and just have as much fun as possible. Period. If I'm not having a good time, I'm way off somewhere.
In other words, Monique is going to live out the life of pursuit of happiness, ladies and gentlemen. We know that for a fact.
The best I can.
Again, I thank you so much for sharing with us here on the program today.
Thank you so much, Richard. You're just amazing. Thank you,
Well,
thank you.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your
everybody.
Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, videocast, love to Lal and Jeanette, I'm listening.